Hello, and welcome to Waltson Victor's productions of A Grassy Knoll in Chicago. This is an autobiography of my life as a kid in the historic 60s. I hope you enjoy what I have to say, and let us begin. My very first memory was that of two faces on a television with large numbers underneath their name. The newsman on the television said that after this long night, John F. Kennedy was now our new president, whatever that meant. I don't even remember who the other guy was, since he did not get a large enough number to become president. I know my mother was happy with this result, and then I recalled earlier that day my mother taking me to a voting booth where I had to stay outside while she pulled some levers behind the curtain of some strange mechanical device. I don't remember anything more about our new president for the next 2 years. What I do remember is getting sick a lot with colds, flu, and chickenpox. One day I was playing with my best friend, who happened to be a girl, and she was playing a cowgirl and I was her horse, and she rode me around my kitchen of the duplex we lived in on the north side of Chicago. While I tried to gallop around my kitchen, all of a sudden my leg gave out. The next day I could not walk at all. My mom took me to the doctor, and he said I was seriously ill and had to go to the hospital. I had been to a hospital once before for my tonsils, and that was scary enough. It was a very frightening experience. This time I did not go home after a day. Instead, it took 3 weeks for me to walk again and leave Columbus Hospital. I was told that I had rheumatic fever, whatever that meant, but it attacked my knee somehow, and that's why I could not walk. Soon after I came home from the hospital, my parents decided to buy a townhouse on the northwest side of Chicago near the newly opened Northwest Expressway. I remember the sad day when I helped my parents pack up all our possessions on a rental truck. It was sad because it was time to say my final goodbye to my best friend Brenda, and we rode to our new home. After setting up our new home in October of 1962, we learned that President Kennedy was going to visit Chicago that very week, and his motorcade would pass right near my new house on that new expressway. I remember the day when the entire neighborhood, seemingly the whole city, lined the overpasses, the sides of the expressway, and the on-ramps so we could see our president pass by on the way to the downtown hotel. We had heard he was a very friendly man of the people, and he might wave to us from atop the presidential limousine. On the day of the visit, I was luckier than most who came to see the president. I was on a grassy knoll in the center of a clover-leaf entrance ramp to that expressway. The police allowed this because the expressway was closed to normal traffic. I saw the presidential motorcade drive by us, the 1,000-strong cheering Chicagoans, proud to see their president in person, as it was. The limousine came within 75 feet of me, and I saw the famous chestnut hair and the profile of the man who I saw on television 2 years before, for about 2 seconds before he went under the underpass. To my disappointment, he wasn't waving at us on top of the limousine. While all thousands of us were waving, cheering, and just enjoying this historic moment in our life, the president was looking down and looking very serious, and was not the friendly man we had seen elected 2 years ago. While I might have been disappointed with my personal contact with my president, a few days later I found out that the Soviet Union was building missiles in the island of Cuba, 90 miles away from Florida, and that we might be going to war with both Cuba and the Soviet Union. I knew that war with the Soviet Union might be with nuclear weapons. Even at 8 years old, I knew what a nuclear weapon could do. I had watched by then many scary movies that had shown that a nuclear bomb over the city would cause a 5-mile wide fireball and incinerate everybody and everything within. During the crisis, I laid in my bed and thought, what would it feel like to be incinerated? What would it be like to die? Somehow President Kennedy got the Soviet Union to remove those weapons, and the thought of dying at any minute went away. For the next 25 years, though, I still worried about dying that way. I didn't die by the bomb in 1963, but my old friend, or should I say my old fiend, rheumatic fever, came back, and this time it was a 4-week stay at Columbus Hospital. The illness did not hit my knee this time, but my heart. But after a few days I was up and mostly healthy, even if my doctors did not agree. I was a veteran patient in this kid ward of the hospital, and my fellow kid patients would go out at night and race wheelchairs down the hall. And I also went with my fellow Catholic patients to midnight mass, even though I was not a Catholic. It wasn't so bad to be in the hospital this time. My parents brought me chocolate malts. They also gave me a poster of my favorite new rock group, the Beatles, that I heard for the first time on WLS radio during my hospital stay. My health was fine, but I saw many kids that did have severe health problems. One kid was seriously burned in a fire, and another had an arrow shot in his eye by his brother. I never heard if he lost his eye because I was discharged, but it did make us kids squeamish anyways, and a few adults as well, I think. After I got out of the hospital, I still got many colds and flus, but my mother, who worked every day, had my grandmother Johnson take care of me during those common childhood illnesses. During one such illness in November of 1963, I was home from school with my grandmother watching a boy at Bozo Circus on WGN television going for bucket number 6 of the grand prize game. The ball was in the air and well on course to land in the bucket for the final round of prizes for this boy, when the screen went completely blank and a voice announced that shots have been fired at President Kennedy's motorcade during his visit to Dallas, Texas. Within an hour we learned that the president had been hit by the shots and he had died from his wounds. During the next few days, we learned that he died in an open limousine from shots fired from a building from behind his car while he was waving at the cheering people in Dealey Plaza. I could not help but remember how I saw him secure in that limousine by my home 13 months ago, and now he was there in an open car, and some evil person shot at him in Dallas. Later, the police said they found that person. We were watching on television the sad, formal funeral of our fallen president. It was very sad to see his kids, not much younger than I, dealing with the death of their father. His son John saluting his father's casket, and Jackie, his wife, lighting the eternal flame. We saw his assassin killed right before us all on live television. This public death taught us all who lived through it the human process of death and mourning, which helped me deal with the death of my 32-year-old brother Sonny, who died of brain cancer a mere 8 years later. In 1964, my favorite group, the Beatles, helped the nation get over this tragedy with their first appearance on the Ed Sullivan Show. Beatlemania was on its way. The new expressway by my house was renamed the Kennedy Expressway, and the space program that President Kennedy believed in landed men on the moon by the end of that same decade. My brother Edward was drafted in 1966 to a war that I didn't even know was happening in Vietnam. My brother didn't want to join the army or go to Vietnam or be a hero, but in 1967 he was in the army and he went to Vietnam as a medic. During a battle, he was surrounded by Viet Cong and being shot at and shelled by mortar. His fellow soldiers were being injured and killed, and the call for medic came out. He could have just stayed put in his foxhole and be somewhat safe, but he didn't. He did his job. He got many of his fellow soldiers to the helicopters and saved a few poor souls that were in this unfortunate war. For this, the military gave him a Bronze Star for bravery. But he knew better. His heroism was just being humane, not a desire to be a hero. I was only 12 years old when my brother went to Vietnam, and 2 years later I entered high school. And President Nixon was still trying to find a peace with honor solution to this war. But the war went on and on. Now my upperclassmen were being drafted. Most of them had 3 bad choices: the draft, Canada, or prison. Many of these young people were protesting in the streets all over the country because they were being forced to make these bad choices. As the conveyor belt of time seemed to send me down into the draft at the end of high school, I had to ponder my choice too. There was a 4th possibility: not becoming draft status 1A. I thought maybe that my 2 bouts with rheumatic fever might make me draft status 4F and save me from going into this terrible war. I don't want to imply that I did not want to fight for my country, whatever that meant. I mean to say that this country was asking teenagers to die for this country in a war against Ho Chi Minh and his minions, who didn't even hate us. Although by this time they had killed 50,000 of our soldiers, mostly because we were in their country killing them. As I was nearing the end of my high school days, I signed up for the draft just like everybody else. But by now, Ho Chi Minh was dead, and by some miracle, Nixon and Kissinger got their peace with honor, and this amazingly long, sad war was finally over. And also, I became the first son in my family who never served in the military. In 1974, I was watching a television docudrama called Missiles of October. This film was about John F. Kennedy's handling of the Cuban Missile Crisis in October of 1962. In the film, Kennedy and his advisors learned of the presence of missiles in Cuba just days before a scheduled trip to Chicago. Since the press had not found out about the missiles yet, he decided to go to Chicago anyways, so as to not tip off the press that there was a serious problem developing. As I was watching this, I realized that was why this very friendly president was not so friendly the day I saw him in Chicago. He was about to tell all of us that maybe the world would come to an end soon if he was not very careful with the job we elected him to do. While this answered my personal question from my youth, I still found it very ironic that while I watched him from the Grassy Knoll in Chicago, saving the world for all of us, his life would end 13 months later near another grassy knoll in Dallas. Anyways, that concludes The Grassy Knoll in Chicago by Waltson Victor Productions. I hope you enjoyed it, and look for future videos from Waltson Victor Productions. Have a nice day.